How's it going, guys? So as I mentioned in my other video that I uploaded today, the bloopers video, I had to cut them in half because it was just running too long trying to put them both together. So anyway, this is the footage that I made answering the submitted questions to my 500 subscribers video, and yeah, I hope you enjoy it. So here's the first question from CK Mormerl. So here is my questions. Do you know of any success stories of older people starting out in your scientific field? And, if so, what are your tips for someone wanting to join a scientific field at an older age? Do I know of any specific success stories? Not necessarily, no. One could say that I myself am starting at kind of an older age. I started going to school when I was 30. I'm 33 now, and got done with community college first, which was kind of a way to ease myself back into it, and I'm actually starting Oregon State here in a few weeks. I'd say that probably the biggest tip that I could give, and I think this is kind of universal, even if you're much older than I am, is that to not get discouraged by your age. Instead, it's more important to foster a really healthy desire to want to learn, and to have at least kind of a general idea, a kind of general direction. Just have a passion, follow it, and pursue it, and talk to your teachers. Because I have to say that I focused the best when I finally went back to school by simply keeping my social interaction purely with my professors, rather than getting a whole lot engaged with students. I found that I didn't really have a whole lot in common with most other students. And to some degree, my age probably played a little bit into that. Here's one from Crashboxfly. Really enjoy your videos. My question is, what are you going to school for? Could you describe in moderate detail, please? When I first went back to school, I didn't really have a whole lot of direction. I knew that I wanted to do something of the hard sciences. I really didn't want to do anything like philosophy or anything really nebulous. Not to disparage any other careers in college, but I knew that I wanted to get into science. And it was actually because of a wonderful professor named Cynthia Adams, who is a psychologist, but she helped to foster a love for neuroscience in me. And since then, I've also been dealing with this whole shebangle with GMOs and stuff. So right now I'm pursuing a bachelor's in general biology, and while I'm working on that, I hope to be making a lot more connections so I can decide which way I want to go for my master's. I'm either thinking I want to go specifically for human biology, focusing on longevity, or I would like to go into neuroscience. And from there, I used to work with people who had severe, profound autism, but I also have family members who have Alzheimer's. So maybe one of those two directions. I'm not really quite sure. I want to see what the school that I'm going to has to offer for me and what really calls to me. And in that, hopefully get some internships and start learning. Sheringan 5100. Hi Jeff, I agree with you on a lot of things, and generally I'm not the biggest fan of feminism in general. That being said, why do you object to folks like Coven or Cybabe identifying as feminists? It seems as though their identification as feminists doesn't hurt anybody, and they seem substantially more reasonable about their style of feminism than, say, Jessica Valenti or Lacey Green. Thanks for the time, Jeff. I appreciate having a fellow shill on board. So to clear something up, I don't really object to anybody calling themselves a feminist. I personally do not call myself a feminist because I don't wish to be associated with a type of rhetoric or narrative. I find that these days a lot of people who identify with a movement, and it's not only just social movements, but skeptic movements and atheism movements, they tend to find themselves in situations where you are pressured to... It seems like a lot of people who end up in these types of movements feel this type of pressure that they have to adhere to a certain stricture or a certain perspective, and there isn't really a whole lot of room for dialogue. Personally speaking, I find a difference of opinion to be the basis for dialogue, not the end of the dialogue. I like when I don't always agree with somebody, because then we can take turns and put forth our best arguments, and hopefully, even if we don't convince one or the other, we have a mutual understanding of where they're coming from. We don't have to agree, but hopefully we can understand. As for some of my relationships with other science communicators, that's kind of an interesting scenario and situation. And I would have to say that I am huge fans of both the Science Babe, Yvette, and of Coven Cinepathy. And I think that they're both wonderful people. I really like what they do. I still share their stuff as much as I possibly can. And I encourage anybody who watches my videos to please go and find their material, read their blogs, see the videos that they put out, and just get to experience the wisdom that both of these fine people bring to science communication. I genuinely feel that my disconnection with them is less about them and more about their fans. When we start talking about just simple sciences or talking about science literacy or intellectual honesty, there has never been a point in time where I've disagreed with either of them. However, there have been quite a few times when a social issue is brought up, and I am not really the type of person who doesn't speak his mind, and I don't always agree with everything people say. That doesn't necessarily make me against what they have to say. But then again, these days, there is kind of a gendered component to people defending others, and for some strange reason, people seem to think that criticism translates into censorship, which I don't really understand. I don't feel censored whenever anybody tells me they don't like what I do. From Physics Police: what do you think about the controversy over the building of the 30-meter telescope in Hawaii? So in preparation for this question, I actually went and did a lot of research. I read up a lot on people's perspectives about it. And I have to say that it's I didn't really find any good satisfactory answers to be able to give a one way or the other definitive answer. I can tell you my perspective, and that's all it's going to be. I like to think that I can respect all cultures, and that I can have compassion for people who might have had to suffer things like colonialism, like people in Hawaii or Australia or here in the United States. And that's fine. But compassion doesn't necessarily have to translate into acquiescence. Now, there are some things that aren't really going to hurt anything. President Obama recently renaming that, I think it was Mount McKinley, to its more native name, which I forget because I'm an asshole, I don't know. That's fine because that doesn't harm anything. But when somebody labels something as sacred, we have to start thinking to ourselves, well, okay, you can call it sacred, and we can respect that you feel that it's sacred, but how much can we then allow that to impact our public policy? And not only just our public policy, our desire to understand and to explore. For me personally speaking, there is no greater impetus than to seek out knowledge and to learn about new things and to develop new understandings of things. And as such, I think the telescope should be built. The unfortunate part of it is these people are claiming that it is a sacred mountain and that they are disturbing it by building it. At the same time, it seems that the people in charge of building it are taking good amounts of steps to try and find a compromise for that. Is that enough? That's subjective, and honestly, I can't really give you a good answer for that. Do I think that people are actually making a good concerted effort for it? I do. I genuinely do. I have compassion that some people are really upset about this, but knowledge does not stop just because you find something offensive or you think that something is untouchable. In science, nothing is untouchable. That's just how things work. And it might seem cold, but that's how I feel. From my friend Stuart. Hey, Stuart. From Legendre007. Jeff Holiday, congratulations. I have a question. I think it's a big problem that many men send rude, obscene messages to women online, but I think that many commentaries on this phenomenon online misdiagnose the problem and provide a dubious solution. They say that men sending obscene messages online is further evidence of male privilege, and that the solution is to reproach men in general for being so privileged. This seems to me to be a misdiagnosis because I am under the impression that men who send these obscene messages usually do so because they are desperate in some way and feel that power over women is exactly what they are lacking. Even when it turns out to be politically powerful and rich men, such as Anthony Weiner was, there was some feeling of inadequacy. If these people are privileged, I think they don't know it, and therefore I don't think they're trying to take advantage of some privilege. But what do you think might be the cause of this phenomenon? Might it be some phylogenetic holdover from behavior in ancient human beings? Is there a more practical way to address this phenomenon than scolding men for their privilege? See, you gotta give me one of these social questions. Okay, alright. So, let's break this down. I'm gonna try and address this in two different parts. The first is that what is the impulse for men to send harassing messages to women online? Can I give you a concrete answer of why every single instance of that happens? No, probably not. Is there probably in some cases an emasculation complex or some sort of some sort of pushback against what they feel is an oppressive system that has matriarchal or misandrist roots, sure, maybe somebody feels that way, possibly. But honestly, when it really comes down to it, I always like to think about this in a gender-neutral terms of, would I feel different if this is being done on the opposite side? And the answer for me is no. Harassment is harassment. Is there more harassment of women by men than men by women? Honestly, using all intellectual honesty, I don't know. Does it feel that way? Yeah, it does. It totally does. And we have to start trying to figure out, like, where is that kind of thing coming from? And I personally think that more than anything else, these are holdovers of an anachronistic time back when men were men and women were relegated to the kitchen and such and such. And but keep in mind, historically speaking, women were not considered useless even back when they didn't have the ability to vote, and there are numerous examples of that. But were they in a position of lesser power? Yeah, and maybe there's like some holdover of that because attitudes are taught by parents to their children. And so these types of this type of mentality kind of carries through lineages, and it takes a while to get rid of. I firmly believe we're on the right track and have been for a while, but we can't just simply stamp it out. It's a learned behavior that just has to stop being taught. And on the flip side, these days, I kind of feel like the opposite behavior is sometimes taught, and I wonder how much our cries for equality sometimes are just trying to equate against what we perceive as a damaging situation. I don't think that most people who fight for equality these days actually give a shit about equality. I genuinely don't. I think they're just angry. And I get that. Lastly, I want to address privilege, and I don't want to mince any words about this. I want to make sure everybody understands exactly what I mean when I say this. If you feel that you have to point out somebody's privilege, you're an asshole. I'm sorry, you're an asshole. Don't get me wrong, I can be an asshole too. But the very act of pointing out somebody's privilege is kind of an asshole-ish thing to do. And the reason why that is most of the time when people point out privilege, they're pointing out something that somebody has no control over. Their race, their gender, the way they were brought up, that sort of thing. And because of that, you're trying to foist upon some sort of dismissiveness based upon something that they have no control over. Because somebody is one thing does not mean that they can't understand or they don't understand. It doesn't mean that they can't also offer something to the conversation. I feel that checking your privilege is just another way to tell people to shut up. And that is the antithesis to a dialectic conversation. I've noticed more and more over the past few months, and actually probably the past couple of years, that social movements do not want to actually discuss or dialogue. They want to shout down. They want to embrace a type of authoritarianism. They want to believe that no matter what they have to say is the absolute hard fact, or the way things should necessarily be. And whether or not they're actually right, that doesn't matter, because again, dialogue should begin with disagreements, not end with them. The simple fact of telling somebody that you should get educated is just telling them to shut up. It's the same thing as saying anything else to just silence somebody's voice. And a lot of times, the people who are using these tactics are claiming that they are fighting for people who don't have a voice, and that they're trying to give them a voice by taking away the voice of others. And I don't really quite understand that. It doesn't seem to work very well for me. Does privilege exist? Absolutely. But it exists in various different ways for everybody. Everybody has some form of privilege, one way or the other. Okay, maybe not starving children like the Philippines or Africa or something like that. Maybe they don't have any privilege whatsoever. But by and large, even just simply living in the United States of America is a privilege. And I don't feel the need to point out anybody's privilege versus my own. Instead, if I need to talk about something that I might not necessarily understand, I don't feel like I'm a dick if I want to explain where I'm coming from and how I feel and what I understand, so that I can then have my basis as a platform to engage with somebody else to tell me their experiences. I don't feel like I should have to shut up to listen to somebody. I think instead of telling people that they should shut up and listen, they should say, hey, you should listen and I'll listen back. But hey, what do I know? I'm a cis-het white male shitlord, so... From Melihan. Hi Jeff, so I was wondering what you thought about righteous hackers, like the ones who leaked the Ashley Madison informations, and others who exposed a lot about the NSA. Like, do you think what they're doing is good, even though it's illegal? So what do I think about righteous hackers? Well, I think that I think like with anything else, it's kind of subjective. It really depends on like what we're talking about. There were groups of people who did identify as anonymous who helped to get word out during the Egyptian revolution just a few years back. So the world knew what was happening, even though they had cut the line to the internet there in Egypt. They used their various connections and technological prowess so that the world could see what was happening. That's very noble. That's pretty good. You can't really argue with that. But then you get like this Ashley Madison hack thing, and what do I feel about that? I don't advocate anybody cheating. I don't advocate breaking anybody's trust. I've never cheated on anybody in my life. I try and tell the truth even if it leads to a really uncomfortable situation. Just how it is. But at the same time, you have to allow that just because somebody displays a certain type of behavior doesn't necessarily mean it's going to lead to a certain type of actions. Sexuality and relationships are rarely something that can be concretely discussed as an even platform that everybody's going to feel the same about. I have had various different relationships that were very unorthodox, and to some it might be perceived as a negative thing versus others. When I was in a committed monogamous relationship, did I ever take the time to go and see what else is out there or consider what it was like to be with somebody else? Of course I did. But the fantasy that we hold inside of us doesn't necessarily have to dictate the actions that we employ outside of us. And so hacking the Ashley Madison database, I don't really think it's that cool of a move, to be totally honest with you. Just because somebody signs up on Ashley Madison doesn't mean they're going to cheat on somebody. But at the same time, as much as it seems like I might defend people who sign up for Ashley Madison, I can't honestly quantify how many people sign up for it and never actually put any effort into it. Maybe it was just a fantasy for them. I can't tell you with a straight face exactly how many people that would have been versus their entire database, so I can't say for sure. As far as like leaking things from the NSA, you know, that falls into kind of a gray territory. I think that especially when it comes to espionage and secret stuff that happens with the United States military, I think that oversight is important. It absolutely is important. But at the same time, you know, we elect people to take care of the things for us that otherwise we're not going to. And part of that is foreign affairs and state secrets and data collection and that sort of thing. I don't like the idea of the government invading my privacy or employing some underhanded tactics against me or the rest of the citizenry. But at the same time, I'm more realistic about it, and I pretty much assumed that that kind of thing was going on for the past, I don't know, 2 decades. And so because of that, I just don't really do anything bad online. But that's me taking agency over my own online experience and my own content that I put out there. So that for me is a personal perspective. I suppose really it comes down to what are the results of it. If it was something that really should have come to light and it does, then that was good. If it was just simply for the sake of doing it, what's the point? But I'm not going to try and spin some yarn about, you know, putting the lives of people in danger by revealing these super state secrets. That's subjective as shit too, and I just don't do subjective. Man, these are some crazy questions. Nobody asked me, like, do I have a pet, or what my favorite color is, what's my favorite food. I really like clam chowder, I don't know. Or who I listen to, or anything like that. Instead, these were really thoughtful and interesting and in-depth questions, and I actually really liked them, so yeah. But yeah, hey, it wasn't a whole lot of questions. I only got like a tiny little bit of views on that 500 subscriber video, and that's fine. But I had a lot of fun making this and saving my bloopers and making it for you guys. And, you know, we'll do one again when I hit 1,000 subscribers. So until then, see you later. Hello, my name is Jeff Holiday, and I make videos on science and skepticism.
Evil biotech.
Sometimes I play video games.
Break yourself!
And sometimes I'm just goofing off. If you like anything that I do, don't forget to hit the thumbs up button. Subscribe if you'd like to see more videos like that, and don't forget to check out my other channels. Thanks!